So Andy, we tend to take a very loose start to this. We're just gonna start talking about it. It's called tangential giants for a reason, because it's gonna go where it goes.
Who are the giants?
Those two, the ginger giant.
Are you both tall? Is that what's up with that?
Yeah.
Because I know Kareem towers a head over me.
I am taller than Kareem.
Yeah.
I don't belong here. I've made a mistake.
we did send Ken stilts.
Yeah. Well, and also I'm referred to, they're the tangential giants. I'm just the mouse butler. That's the role that we designated from the first podcast. I'm just here to add in my 2 cents, but I am not a tangential giant.
We don't all have to be mice though, right?
I think I'm shorter than you. So yeah, you are more
shorter than me.
Yeah. You'd say you have more room here than I do. So
congratulations, Andy. You're a normie.
I am. I'm exactly normal.
Are you 5'8.5"?
I'm almost 5'9.5".
A little ahead of it.
I shrunk a little bit in the last year of sitting a lot.
Yeah.
Damn quarantine.
Yeah. I got to get back in the gym and do some pull-ups, and that'll just get that half inch back. Yeah.
I do believe that's how gravity works.
That's what they like you to think.
Yeah, gravity does work, so we'll just make it work for you, There
you go.
It's working against me my whole life.
All right, so we're getting started. We are 14 years past Heroes being premiering and kind of taking, I guess, early 2000s by storm. I don't know, what were your thoughts, everybody, when it first showed up? I mean, if you can kind of detach its history now with how you first, received the show, or at least the first premiere.
Well, I think that, sorry, one of the reasons why I thought Andy would be a great person to have on is because he and I actually saw the first episode at Comic-Con, and at the time we had press badges. So we watched the premiere at Comic-Con and then went upstairs and interviewed the cast. And and we have I still have my press kit somewhere, with a special edition comic and a button.
Comics.
And
they gave out comics every year.
Yeah. Then they also had pins every day, where you had to go back to the booth every day to get a pin, and you try to get a whole set, because that was very much that was the thing for Comic-Cons at the time. You went back for pins every day, and they wanted to maintain that engagement. But we saw it, and we both really, really enjoyed it, because at the time, you'd kind of built towards is that, to a certain degree, this was ahead of its time, in that it's a superhero show, even though we don't have superhero shows kind of in the mainstream. The most you had for the most part was kind of Smallville was in that same kind of space. You had other shows
pre MCU.
Yeah, pre MCU, pre DC, DC WB stuff. There was no Arrow. Those shows just weren't on the market yet.
It was Smallville or bust, wasn't it?
It was,
and Spider-Man movies.
Yeah. There were some movies.
First two Spider-Man movies.
Batman Begins had come out, I believe. I think that was 2005.
Then it's 2004 for Heroes. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So you're looking at the old George Clooney Batmans.
Yeah.
And 80s Batman and Spider-Man movies. Yeah.
And
don't forget about the Punisher.
Stuff.
Dolph Lundgren.
What year is the Punisher?
The Dolph Lundgren one, not
Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, I was gonna say Thomas Jane had not graced us yet.
No, he had not.
And so it was kind of hot on the heels of shows like Lost that were let's get serialized television. Let's throw superheroes into that kind of kingdom and see how that works out. And they brought together a bunch of different people from they did have Jeff Loeb on as an executive producer, who also brought in Tim Sale to do the art, which was also, he was there at that first interview that Andy and I did. So I ended up getting a sketch from him of Gwen Stacy, because and it's funny because I don't know how that, to this day, I still don't know how this happened, because Tim Sale is one of the grouchiest people I ever met when it came to Comic-Con. And I watched him turn down so many people for sketches. My wife got a sketch from him, and then Ken. And that's the only two people I've ever seen succeed with Tim Sale in the sketch department.
Well, I mean, in Ken's defense, he is grouchy. So I wonder if they had a mutual, a meeting of the grouchiness, and was I respect this.
He's not as grouchy as Darwin Cook, but
Okay.
pretty grouchy.
And so we interviewed, I would say pretty much the entire cast was there, I think, except for Hayden and Milo.
Zachary Quinto, I don't believe was there the first. I don't remember him, but he might have been.
Yeah, I just remember there were two people who didn't make it, and I want to say it was Hayden and I want to think maybe Milo, but I'm not sure. It's been over a decade.
I think Milo was there.
Yeah,
and so they showed off the pilot, but they didn't show off the pilot. They had people in Comic-Con show up in a ballroom and be like, "Hey, enjoy 72 minutes of the pilot." Not just, yeah. It wasn't even like this is going to be a 2-parter that we're going to put together with something else. It was, we've got this extended episode to show you.
They just showed you a short movie.
Just 70 minutes long. It was a certain point you were kind of like, holy wow, are they really going to run something this long on TV?
Yeah.
And it was fascinating and interesting. And I think our first introduction to it was sitting in that room and being like, wow, they're really airing a full on comic book thing. And some of the characters died in the first episode. Some people were bad guys that didn't. And so you guys remember Mohinder.
Mm-hmm.
Mohinder is like in a very gray area in that first pilot where he walked into Siler's apartment and killed him.
Okay.
I'm remembering some odd bits because that was in the first that first pilot cut was different than what we got in. Yeah.
You remember Grunberg's in this show.
Yeah.
And in the pilot cut that we saw, he spends 30 minutes taking down the terrorist plot who's responsible for the train crash in Odessa that starts the show. Totally removed from the show.
Yeah,
Grunberg has nothing to do almost at all ever after this.
He looks concerned a lot.
Yeah.
That's because he's listening.
Yeah.
So our introduction is this, and it's like then it goes on the air, Yeah.
Well, I wonder if at a certain point that they were like, this is probably never going to air, and we're just going to throw everything at it. Before they got a budget and before they were able to flush out the story, it seems like they were just throwing everything at this. Like, because as you said, some of the stuff doesn't even pan out. Like it switches entirely.
Yeah.
So I think once the studios were like, yeah, we're gonna do this for 2 seasons or a season. I don't know. I think they had the first season, then they got it like an extension or whatever. Then they're like, we're gonna need to extend these characters somewhat.
It's gonna sound bad, but I don't think it's entirely that. I think it has to do with politics at the time.
Probably.
Because you've got to remember how long ahead you start filming stuff like this and prepping it. And so probably midway through writing and prepping this thing, we invade Iraq. And they're like, by 2004, maybe we got to back off the terror. Everybody's related to terrorism thing. Which is weird.
I feel like Jack Bauer was still running around kicking the shit out of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure he was. But that was the point of it, right? And in this one, it was like the guy that was the terrorist was a friend of the cop. And so it was like, is America the baddie? And you're like, not right now. It's not even.
We can't have that conversation. That's
but you should. You're making art. You maybe should make that conversation happen. But then they're trying to air something that no one's ever seen before, and the studio's like, look, we're going to give you this much leash, not this much leash.
Yeah.
Everybody calm down.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that also goes to the channel. There certain basic network channels are willing to do certain things. It makes a lot of sense. 24 is on Fox, and Heroes in that form is on NBC.
Sure.
That really tracks in terms of how they see themselves and tend to do things, especially at that time.
Do you think we would have gotten a different show if this were on FX? Well, and this kind of goes back to the argument of it being before it's ahead of its time.
No.
Okay.
No, because
if it airs in 2004, you get what you get, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more a product of its time in that way. That's why, in certain aspects, it is like they had ideas that maybe weren't as popular, but I don't know if it's necessarily it does feel dated. Yeah. So it's like saying it's ahead of its time. It's a bit odd.
Well, no, I'm saying Well, from the pilot you guys saw, I'm imagining a world where that aired on FX and the show continued in that direction versus what NBC gives us and where it eventually ends up.
Gotcha.
Because FX sort of kind of pushes some boundaries with like a show like The Shield or something like that. Versus
I wish I could.
the police. This is an NBC where we get something a little more neutered.
Yeah, I mean that's the difference between basic cable and network television. That's they have to push that envelope to get you over to like make it worthwhile.
I don't think you end up with The Boys.
Come on. Hey guys, I just have one question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So, what happens if, I don't know, I do this? And now you're just another useless fucking blind guy.
Level stuff from FX. But you might end up with, you said The Shield, you might end up with something more intense, I think, than you ended up with here, where HRG a lot of the time gets pulled back by being on network television, whereas maybe if you had his ability to just pop people, you'd lose more characters.
It'd be a lot more torture for sure.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But not to keep going on this point too long, but non-network TV also struggled at this time. I know Ken, Battlestar was on the air in 2004, and they struggled to keep that on the air for 5 years. I mean, really, like a lot of stuff in this era really struggled to stay on the air.
But that's on Sci-Fi though, right? Like that's
but it's not network. Yeah,
I mean that's what I mean. It's those that you have a different audience. So it's like you do have I guess you would have I don't know if you have a harder time saying that you pull in an audience because it's not as easily accessible. You don't have like, oh, this many eyes can watch you for free right away.
Sure.
So
I don't think Sci-Fi was in the first tier basic cable package at that time too. I think it was you got to get the specialty package with drama and fantasy.
Before they were CFI?
Yes. Before we got Wyvern Part 7, Wyvern Attack, all the greatest hits.
It just reruns of Alienation again and again.
Basically.
One more time with Feeling. One more time with Shark. I believe Sharknado
7.
Yeah.
No, those are Sharknado's at least like 2010 or later.
Yeah.
You can't get Sharknado in 2004.
No. Everybody.
Tara Reid was not ready in 2004 to Sharknado.
She was still with Van Wilder at that point. She was
she's still cashing those what are they called?
Royalties?
No, what was the series called?
American Pie.
American Pie.
Those pie checks. Piece
pie
of
checks.
the pie. Yeah.
See yourself out, Pat.
Fair.
I liked it. No, keep it.
I just want Pat's letter to show up. That's how you see yourself out digitally.
I'll be on my way.
Well, I mean, you guys were obviously in the room. How was everyone that was sitting there like during the whole 70 or 72 minutes or whatever?
They were wrapped. Yeah, they were like this was led by massive applauses and everyone. It played very well in the room. Like it was at the time it was a hit within that room, and that's what shows want when they go to Comic-Con.
Who was the artist in this show? What was it? Isaac?
It was Isaac the painter?
The painter. Yeah. So like it ended on a cliffhanger. I think Isaac was like shot.
Jesus.
God damn.
I think so.
I think was Isaac dead at the end of the
he was either like shot or dead. Siler was like dead. Mahinder was it was like
I don't know where they were going to go with this.
It was fascinating.
Well,
and you're kind of at the end of 70 minutes. You're like, huh. Okay. Sure. I'll watch more of that.
So this is a mini series? This is
exactly.
It felt very much like it. And the tagline at the beginning of that is save the cheerleader thing. Right. Yeah. And so like, you're left with like, okay, so like clearly we're going to get to that really quickly, and something bad is like going to happen with this Odessa thing, and it felt like it was that mini series feeling of maybe the show will be a couple seasons, or maybe it'll be not repeating the same story for 4 seasons, or I don't know. I don't know, Ken, did it have the feeling of like a
it felt like they were ready to, they had plans to like to pull this out, like we're gonna get here and then we're gonna move. They were building the better structure of the world. That's what we were sold. Whether that played out on television, I think we will solve later on in this podcast. But that was at the time. It's just like, oh no, they've got a world built. They have people in place to move this story forward. Mm-hmm. And that's that. We were on board from that moment.
All right. So, with that being said, what was your reaction when you guys were at home and you saw the actual episodes? At least the first 2.
What the hell is even that?
It was surprising to see the altered, to see like, oh wait, so that story is going to be different here. Because I think they even said in the room too that this was essentially their early cut of the pilot. They did make it known that this was going to be a different version than Air. And
but I remember calling Ken. I remember calling you and being like, so like Isaac didn't end up shot or whatever. I was like, what happened? What did we see versus this thing? I remember us talking on the phone about it. And I don't remember specifically but I remember both of us talking about it for sure. And being like, I don't like, maybe in the next episode, some of that stuff happens. and then Mohinder's like a totally like goody two shoes guy. All of a sudden you're like, okay, well, who's this Siler dude now? And the Siler dude from the first pilot was like a mysterious thing. And the Siler dude you start to see in this one is like the creepy guy. And it diverged pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
it was like, go on.
I was going to ask, so what was the time, how much time were we talking about between when the Comic-Con and then that actual, the show airing?
2 months.
2 months. That, because the show you're describing honestly sounds like an entirely different show, given where it played out in the rest of season 1. So it does sound like, from an outside perspective, some of the problems that ended up like plaguing the series, kind of lack of direction after some initial ideas, meandering around the long way, all of those things kind of got baked in immediately, because it seems like they had to just completely cut certain lines that would have driven it that way. Like, it seems like, oh, we're going this way. And whether it was them or the studio said, no, you're going to make a hard right now, way over here.
I think that I think that when looking back at it, that it was more of a like, oh, like certain characters' story arcs weren't touched, like Peter's, Claire's, the cheerleader, and other characters.
Nobody wants to touch those.
They were all the same. It was just certain characters had altered storylines. So essentially, they made the cut, which felt more like the pitch cut. Like this is what the show could be. And then they altered those few different story arcs just for that pilot, so that Isaac does survive past this point. So we don't have to because that's going to play out for the whole season. And so it wasn't like a stark difference. It's just like, oh, those storylines, because the way they were cut felt very different. Like, oh, okay, so how's this going to play out? Mm-hmm. But when they just lift those characters and rearrange their stories down the line, you're like, oh, the rest of it plays fine, because you still have, out of, let's say, the 6 character storylines, only 2 of them were really that much altered. Whereas when you're looking at the bigger picture, you're like, oh, I do. And especially when you have 2 months to obsess over. I'm looking at it right now. It looks like in July is when we saw it, the 22nd. Mm-hmm. And in September, so it was months later, we just ruminated on like, oh, wait, what's this going to be? What's that going to be? How are they going to play all this out? And we built up all this stuff in our head, and it definitely left us with that, like, oh, we got to build our own story in our head, which may have affected our enjoyment down the line too. So
I wonder if it was actually, I mean, and this is just me being cynical and conspiratorial, is if this was a bait and switch, because you guys said it was 2 months, which means, this, as you alluded to earlier, Andy, that this, we're talking years of work, filming, editing, all of the licensing, all that kind of stuff that needs to go down before you premiere something. And if they showed you guys something that was 72 minutes long that ends up getting changed 2 months later, I feel like all the stuff that they'd already shot, it already gotten approved. You guys were able to see something and then go tell, word of mouth and all that kind of stuff, something more exciting than what they were already going to show anyway. I don't think that they were able to go back in 2 months later and then, reshoot stuff.
Well, that's actually one of the things too, is that the reason why I want to say Hayden and Peter weren't at the Comic-Con panels because they were still shooting. They
were doing shoots. Yeah.
Yeah. They had said like, oh, they wanted to be here, but they're still filming scenes right now because they were still greenlit for the rest of the season.
What about the stuff like you guys said Siler got shot? So, I mean,
Siler basically didn't exist really. Like,
in as full character as he did
in full character in that pilot. It was just like this Mohinder guy who's stealing people's powers. Sound familiar? Goes up to Siler and closes the door on him, and you're like, oh, okay. I guess he acts that guy off screen or whatever, whoever that was. And I don't mean to burst the bubble, but shows get edited like up to basically the last minute. So that part's not surprising. Of maybe they showed something in July and behind the scenes, yeah, maybe they're still talking about changing stuff, but they're not gonna not air whatever they were gonna air at Comic-Con just because maybe they're already in a new edit to change people's paths or whatever. And then 2 months to go down 30 minutes isn't crazy.
44, but yeah,
isn't crazy because of cutting that terrorist plot out. That's like 15 minutes right there.
Yeah.
So and then you change, one or two things and start to cut the fat out, and it's not that shocking.
Well, what I'm wondering though is because you said Mohinder was almost a different character.
Yeah.
So do you have him go back and reshoot stuff?
Or they had already shot an alternate take that they used? Because I think of it more.
That's what I was hinting at. Is that what you guys saw was something that they weren't going to air anyway?
Yeah, it was like a sizzle reel preview cut.
The studio had to have already approved something else, right?
Yeah.
It's very likely that they had a cut that was set specifically for this event. They're like, oh, we want to get you hooked, so let's give them this. I guess sizzle reel is the best thing in my brain, but it's not, because it is a full episode or two. But I think that they probably knew that they were going to alter things quite a bit. So they're like, let's show them what version we have here to get them enticed. And then they're going to come back for more. And then we got the series we got, and we got the 2-parter and opened it up.
You gotta remember the way pilots work, right? Is that in 2003, they filmed everything they showed you at Comic-Con, plus probably more in 2004 once the pilot gets picked up. And they're still filming season 1 by July 2004. They're probably about halfway through it. So it's not shocking to see an unaired pilot turn into something completely different.
Yeah.
It is shocking to not see the recovery, maybe. I don't know if that's another topic to get into, but like to see strings from the original pilot not get picked up differently later on.
By the way, for the pedants out there, it's 2006 that the show aired and all this happened. But just so we'll get a comment on Facebook, on YouTube, like, it was in 2006. It's like, yes, we know. We're going off our.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Dixon.
Actually, us to death.
Are you trying to tell me that?
Oh God.
Nah.
He's back.
Oh God.
I feel like
cannot be a recurring character.
Yeah, ABC is going to just start flagging our videos because Ice-T doesn't like your impersonation.
Fair enough. That's
they don't want us to talk about heroes. They don't want that at all. They're gonna.
That's true too.
Move Mosey on past that.
Well, I mean, kind of looking at some more of the script breakdown. I mean, we can also get into, our kind of theories on what happened in the show. Like, we have an overview of what happened, what you guys got to see, like the inside stuff as the show gets started. And, we've all, it was critically acclaimed, and, it had tons of viewership in the first season and stuff like that. But were there anything in the season 1 that you guys saw that you could start to see were issues that were going to plague the show beyond that?
I mean, if you're looking
like casting, special effects, budget.
Well, the budget would be the first
Casting.
one that stands out.
Casting.
I was gonna start
No, I'm just kidding.
twofold. I get it. You hate Hayden Panettiere. It's fine. You can have 5 minutes just to attack her. That's what you need. Do what you got to do.
It's different. Because I'm starting to wonder if I'm even human anymore. Because if you can't feel anything, do you still have a soul? Will I live forever? All of these questions, I need to prove that I'm still alive. So I guess I should just start by saying, my name is Claire Bennett and this is attempt number 7.
It was gonna take a big budget to make this continue the way it was going because you had to escalate that CGI moving forward. I can't remember if it's season 1 or season 2 where you can really start to see the budget tighten because Siler goes to somebody's house whose power is to make basically things explode. And so he just like points and shoots at a glass and it explodes. He points and shoots at another glass and it explodes. It's like, oh, you guys can't afford to show any powers. You're at the point now where you just have to have somebody shoot a BB gun behind him and break the glass. Okay. And that happened fairly early on, and you could just see the constraints like, okay, we're going there. And also, and this once again may be hindsight, I remember seeing a season finale of season 1 and being somewhat underwhelmed because it all kind of wrapped really quick. I remember it really wraps up in that last 10 minutes. And it doesn't really end anywhere that was nearly as interesting as what the mystery could have been. And it felt like I'm not a big J. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I guess that wraps everything up in a nice, neat little package. I'm sorry if it sounded sarcastic. I really just meant that. It really did. That's the Simpsons episode comes in my head. But yeah, it just...
There's still the little matter of the whereabouts of your wife.
I'm right here.
Oh, I see. Then everything is wrapped up in a neat little package. Really, I mean that. Sorry if it sounded sarcastic.
It does kind of like, and it leads like a little bit of like, oh, and then you see a blood streak this way, so someone survived. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right. So like the build up, because the entire first season is in at least from my point of view, is like it's the gathering of the fellowship. You're getting everyone together. How do we finally Peter's gonna talk to Isaac, and Isaac knows about this person, and they're all gonna finally come together. And then they do, and you're like, cool. Nothing like that. Okay. Well, they averted the catastrophe. That's good. And then the next season starts up. We're scattered to the wind. What you were just there. We just got together, and I mean, it takes a good team of writers, because I had the same problem watching Stranger Things season 2, I think it was, and like everyone's like, oh well, all this stuff is happening. I'm like, call each other. You have phones. Like this is like you have actual like. Go tell your brother. Your brother is fighting something too. Why aren't you talking to each other? Everyone's just doing their own damn thing. That does a better job of like, okay, people are apart, and at least it's the 80s, so they have less of an ability. Like if you call them and they're not home, that's all you can do. But like this show was just like, I'm like, just call him back. Like, hey Nathan, it's David. We remember how we saved the world. We should do it again. Cool. Like that was definitely part of it for me, was where they're like, the whole build up to that ending was like, cool. We got the team together.
Here's the X-Men. Never mind. They're hard pass. It did also feel like, oh, you didn't know if you were going to get picked up. So you try, and to their credit, like, okay, we're going to try and wrap it up and make it at least satisfactory in some way, shape, or form, if it's a 1-season thing. And there wasn't a lot, didn't quite know where to go after that. Like maybe they're like, oh, we got picked up. Oh, I did not expect that. All right, let's get back to the writer's room.
Fuck back to work.
And I believe the writer's strike happened shortly after that, correct?
I believe
after the beginning of season 2, right?
Yeah, it was in mid-season 2 is when they kind of got hit with it. So I don't know. Did anybody else have? I definitely butted in there and gave my thoughts on the season 1 finale and the season 1 in general.
I would just say mystery plots require a lot of pre-planning. And so if you're going to have one tagline, one refrain that you're going to repeat ad nauseum every episode, the entire season, the entire time.
What was that? I don't know
I'm not doing it.
Okay. It's okay. Kareem will drop in a clip of it right now.
Save the cheerleader, save the world.
Yeah, balls of the walls. That was her phrase. No, wrong.
Well, that one requires no mystery.
It was, I'll buy that for $1.
There we go.
Always,
There we go.
I'll buy that for $1.
I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah, then you got to
No matter
get
what it is.
Then you got to get the guy shooting the giant cannon saying, "I like it." That needs to be on your soundboard for this.
Red Foreman, just
We'll add red.
I like it.
It's gotta pay off.
Yeah.
And like when the payoff is like, what was the disaster? I don't know. It was averted.
Yeah, they never really
Like,
defined what was gonna what happened.
Exactly. So what's gonna happen when he kills her? It's averted. Don't worry about it.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah.
It's like, okay.
Well,
All
wasn't
right,
it that
whatever.
He was just going to be like all powerful, and that was about it.
I would assume it was like, okay, well, once he gets that power, then he's, unbeatable or something. And it's like that's like kind of a payoff, but it's not that big a payoff.
Well, it would only have been a payoff if like he actually wanted to do something with all that power.
Yeah,
It'd be like
exactly.
Thanos taking
Yeah,
all
sure.
the rings and being like, I got a sweet ass glove. I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, he didn't have it in game. He was just kind of like, well, I just want to keep collecting powers. And essentially the crux of it was, I mean, this is spoilers for this, 14-year-old show, but the idea was that without him saving Claire, Peter can't copy her power so that he survives the event. And that was it. Just that she needs to be there so he can copy her power. All right. Like that was the crux of it. That was
And so this kind of goes back to my point of like when you're pre-writing all this stuff, and I lay a lot of it on Jeff Loeb because it's happened before in Jeff Loeb mysteries where you're like, well, that wasn't that big a mystery.
Make two very mirrored like characters in a show and then write himself into a corner.
I don't know about that part, but when you sometimes get to the end of some, I like a lot of his stuff, like a lot of it, but then you get to the end of it and you're like, it was good, and getting there was good, but the payoff is kind of like,
he's very
it's all
much
about the
journey
journey.
rather than destiny. Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But
also his early stuff is much better than his later stuff. He started to wane, and then he's like, well, now I'll be a producer and I'll produce things instead. It's like, yes, because your talent's now gone. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so rude, but
That's pretty rude.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll edit that out.
it's the hottest of hot takes.
We'll just put asshole on Ken's screen during that whole section. I have all the same talking points you guys said about, the plot and following through and the budget constraints, things like that. There were just specific things as far as characters and like their own makeup. Like I had a problem with Peter altogether and the way Siler was going about these certain things. I got the cool, like, his dad was a clockmaker and so is he. And this is how he figures out the powers, so to speak. And it seemed overly convoluted when you have Peter running around just like, I'm going to touch you, I'm going to touch that, I'm going to touch these things, I'm like, well, they're similar, they're almost the same character going towards the same convergence, and you could see that as they were going throughout the season one, and you're like, well, why is this guy doing it super difficult and this guy isn't?
Well, then, and again, spoiler alert, but aren't they end up being siblings, right?
What the hell?
That's part of the stupid plot down the line is that they're siblings, and like Peter didn't have a power and they manufactured one for it gets so like, fuck, we gotta keep pulling ideas out of something.
Yeah.
And it is
Well, it's funny that you mentioned him not having a power, because at a certain point in that show, it was kind of like, are we going to have a hero in here that doesn't have a power? Because that would be legit.
Yeah.
And then,
for a show called Heroes.
Yeah.
We're waiting for our Batman moment.
Yeah. Or like Freshman or whatever other comic you have, or where there's always the dude that just trying to hang with the big boys.
We kind of had Heroes Friend, right? Wasn't it? What was
HRG, I guess, technically.
Is that his name?
No, two different cases. He's saying Hero's friend who just was with him for the adventure.
Hero's friend. Yeah. I mean, I guess didn't he like get written out?
I mean, he's like a Robin.
He became like a ninja or something. Then I think Hero killed him.
No,
he get
Hero
written
became.
out?
Kill Ando?
Yeah, he has no powers. What good is he to us? You kill him, you are a badass.
My friend, I must make sacrifices to save the world.
Yeah, he got written out. I
thought
don't
he
know.
died.
I mean, it's possible he died. He probably Hero got him killed because
In the future, though, he became some kind of like badass warrior fighter thing.
I think that's Hero. I think you're
That's
mixing them up,
Hero.
and that's kind of
Oh,
racist.
Hero comes back with the giant sword on his back.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
and,
talking about?
and does absolutely jack shit with all that training. He just runs forward.
Yeah, I went to a different time, got trained to be an amazing assassin. Oh, we're getting into Hero, and I don't want to start.
Okay.
Save that for the end. I will also say horn-rimmed glasses, he had the power of funding. And
Oh, that's right.
the
He was the
biggest
guy without
superpower
powers.
of all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he
what-
had no
that's-
powers at all, but like
He had money.
the company is behind him.
Yeah.
The company.
Well, we start to see his character fall apart when the company is no longer behind him, though.
We start
Right.
to see his character fall apart, like just based on his relationship with Claire. Like it's just
Bad dad.
yeah,
Not good.
not great.
No. Also, she was kind of poisoned. Everything she touched just went to shit, though.
Here it comes.
Wow, here it is. That's the